All right, so in 5.4, we have sum and difference formulas. Sometimes we're going to be asked to find the cosine or sine of an angle that is not on our unit circle. So to do that, we have to use one of these formulas, which these formulas will be given to you on the next test. So you don't even have to memorize them. All you got to do is plug it in. So we use these when the angle is not on the unit circle. Or when we have a combination of unit circle angles to figure out exact answers. So, or we use them to figure out exact answers. So looking at the first question, the cosine of 75, we could put this into our calculator and find what the cosine of 75 is, but it's going to be some decimal, and that's not an exact answer. So what we do is figure out which combination of two angles do we have here that are two angles on the unit circle, and we plug it into our formula. So what are two angles that we have on the unit circle that add up to 75?
45 and 30.
45 and 30. So the cosine of 75, one of our angles is going to be 45, and one of them is going to be 30. So that's our u and our v. So we're going to plug it into this one here because we have cosine and we add them to get what we need. So we have the cosine of 45 plus 30, which that would be 75, which is what we're looking for, is equal to the cosine of u, so the cosine of 45, times the cosine of v, which is the cosine of 30, minus the sine of u, so the sine of 45, times the sine of v, which is the sine of 30.
How do you know what is u and v?
It doesn't matter which one is u or v. So if we wanted to make u 30 and v 45, we could do that. And now we just go to our unit circle and find each one of these. So the cosine of 45, we're looking at 45. So this one here. Cosine, are we looking at the x or the y?
X.
Cosine is x. So if it helps, write the x on top of the cosines, and then you would write y on top of the sine. So it helps you to see which value you need to look at on your unit circle. So cosine of 45, we're looking at the x, which is square root 2 over 2. What's the cosine of 30?
Square root 3 over 2.
Square root 3 over 2. What is the sine of 45?
Square root 2 over 2.
Square root 2 over 2, so we're looking at the y now. And then the sine of 30, again, we're looking at the y. So what's the sine of 30? 1/2. Now we just multiply them together, and then we're going to subtract. So let's multiply. How do we multiply our first two? Square root 2 over 2 and square root 3 over 2. Bless you. So multiplying fractions, we multiply the tops together, multiply the bottoms. So we get 4 on the bottom. How can we multiply square root 2 times square root 3? What do we get?
Square root 6.
Square root 6. Then we do the same thing for the next one. Multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. So square root 2 over 4. and then we subtract. We have the same denominator, which is perfect for our fractions. And how can we subtract the top? What's square root 6 minus square root 2?
Square root 4.
So when subtracting, we cannot combine them. So it would just be square root 6 minus square root 2. When multiplying, you multiply what's under the square roots together. Subtracting, we can't combine them. So this would be our final answer. If we put this into the calculator and got some decimal, that would be the same thing as doing cosine of 75 in the calculator and getting some decimal. So this is just the long version of how to find the exact answer.
Is this one that we can put in
No, for this homework, you're not putting it in the WebAssign. WebAssign makes you like take out a common factor. It would just be like so difficult to plug this into WebAssign, and the way they want it is just weird. So for this homework too, you're just gonna do it as like a PDF. So you don't have to type in anything for this homework either. All right, let's look at B. So here we have sine of pi over 12. Pi over 12 is not on our unit circle, so we need to find what combination of two angles gives us pi over 12. The best way to do this when we have radians is to convert to degrees. So we always want to convert first. So how do we convert pi over 12 to degrees?
Is it times 360 over pi?
Not 360,
Oh no, 180.
180. So times 180 over pi. So the pi's cancel. We have 180 over 12. What's 180 over 12? $15? Yeah. All right, so we are finding the sine of 15. So again, 15 is not on our unit circle, but what combination of two angles that are on our unit circle would give us 15?
None.
Keep in mind we could subtract
Oh, 45 and 30.
45 and 30. So we're using this formula here, which is the sine, because we're dealing with sine now, and we're subtracting. So we would have the sine of 45 minus 30. So our u is 45 and our v is 30. Now we just plug everything in into our formula. So we have the sine of u, so the sine of 45, times the cosine of v, cosine of 30, minus cosine of u, so cosine of 45 times the sine of 30. And now we find all of these on our unit circle and just plug it in. So sine, we're looking at which value on our unit circle? X or y's? Sines y's, cosines x. So I like to write it on top just so I know what I'm looking at. So what is the sine of 45 degrees?
Square root 2 over 2.
Square root 2 over 2. What is the cosine of 30?
Square root 3 over 2.
Square root 3 over 2. Then minus, what's the cosine of 45?
Square root 2 over 2.
Square root 2 over 2. And then the sine of 30?
One half.
1/2. So we multiply these together, what do we get when we have square root 2 over 2 times square root 3 over 2?
Square root 6 over 2.
Square root 6 over 4. Remember, we multiply the tops together, multiply the bottoms. And then what do we get when we multiply square root 2 over 2 times 1/2?
Square root 2 over 4.
Square root 2 over 4. Now how do we simplify?
Square root 6 minus square root 2 over 4.
Awesome. We get the same answer as last time, which is just a coincidence. All right, so in this example, it looks a little bit different than the one before. It tells us that we need to use sine of u plus v to find our exact value. And then it gives us the sine of u is 4 over 5, and the cosine of v is negative 12 over 13. So we're looking at two different triangles here. Bless you. So which formula are we using? What do you think? 1, 2, 3, or 4? What does it tell us? Which one is that?
Is it the first one?
The first one. So we're using the first formula. So we have the sine of u plus v is equal to the sine of u cosine v plus cosine u sine v. So it gave us the sine of u, which is right here, and the cosine of v, which is this one. But we have to find what the cosine of u is and the sine of v. So we got to do a little bit more work to figure out what that is. So the sine of u is 4 over 5. In terms of x, y, and r, what does that tell us? What's sine? Sine is y, but y over, if we include y over r. So let's draw our triangle, because we need to figure out what x is in order to find what the cosine of u is. So we need to find what our x, y, and r are. So it already gave us that our y is 4 and our r is 5. So we got to figure out what the x is. Now we use this other little piece of information here to tell us which quadrant our triangle is going to be in. So if we're going from 0 to pi over 2, what quadrant are we in? First, second, third, or fourth?
The first one?
The first one, because we're going from 0 to pi over 2. Pi over 2 is the same thing as 90. So our first quadrant. So our triangle is over here. This is our theta, or u, we could call it. And we have y is 4, and r is 5. So we need to figure out what x is. How can we figure out what our x is?
Pythagorean theorem.
Pythagorean theorem. So we have x squared plus 4 squared is equal to 5 squared. X squared plus 16 is equal to 25. Subtract 16. X squared is equal to 9. What do we get for x?
3. Or
X is 3.
you only do plus or minus when you have square root.
Can we get... Okay, we would. Good question. But is x positive or negative?
It's positive.
It's positive because it's in the first quadrant. So we could get a negative, but since x is in the first quadrant, it's going to be positive. Everything's positive in the first quadrant. We need to do the same thing for our other triangle here with v. So what is the cosine in terms of x, y, and r?
X over R.
X over r. What do you think that this negative goes with? Does it go with the x on top or the r on the bottom? The x. Why? Because the r can't be negative. Awesome. So our radius can never be negative. So that negative has to go with the x. Now what quadrant are we dealing with here?
The second one.
The second quadrant. We're going from pi over 2, which is 90, to 180. So we're looking at the second quadrant. So our angle V is over here. Our radius is 13. We have the cosine, so cosine's adjacent. So this would be negative 12. And then our y is over here. So we have our x, y, and r. Our x we said is negative 12, r is 13, we got to find y. So what can we do to find y?
Pythagorean theorem.
Pythagorean theorem. So we have negative 12 squared plus y squared is equal to 13. Negative 12 squared is 144. 13 squared is 169. Subtract. What's 169 minus 144?
25.
25. So y is equal to, is it going to be positive 5 or negative 5? What do you think?
Negative? Or plus or minus?
So looking at our graph, our y, so this is just a regular coordinate plane with a point up here.
Oh, so it'd be
Our
positive.
y goes up, so it has to be positive. Our x goes into the negative direction, so it has to be negative. So if it helps, think about it as a regular coordinate plane. This is our point. Y goes up, so it has to be positive. So y is positive 5. Sine, we said, was y over r. Cosine is x over r. So cosine x over r, and sine is y over r. So now let's plug everything in. So this triangle here was our first one that we did with sine of u. So this is our u. That's what we look at when we're looking for u. And then this one here is our v. So we need to look at this one when we're looking for v. So what is our sine of u? Y over r, we're looking at this one here. What's our y? What's our
4.
y? 4. What's our r? 5.
5.
So this was 4 over 5. Cosine of v means that we look at the green part over here. Cosine is x over r, so what's our x? Negative 12, and what's our r? 13. So we have negative 12 over 13 plus cosine of u now. So cosine, we go back to our u triangle, so the pink one. Cosine is x over r, so what's our x? And what's our r? 5, so we have 3 over 5. And then sine of v, so we go back to our v triangle. Sine is y over r, so we look at our y. 5 over 13. And now we just multiply to simplify. So multiply the tops together and the bottoms. What's 4 times negative 12? Negative 48. What's 5 times 13?
20, no, never mind, 65.
65. 3 times 5? 15. And 5 times 13 again is 65. So now we just add our two fractions. What's negative 48 plus 15?
Negative 33.
Negative 33 over 65. So this is our answer. So this one requires a lot of work, but nothing we haven't done before. So for the WebAssign, I would have your notes open, follow the steps that we did to help you. Because this one is easy to get lost or not know where to go next. But definitely have your notes open because it's not that terrible. Once you figure out what your x, y, and r is for both things, for your u triangle and your v triangle, then you just plug it in. Any questions?